What happens when the woman your pack called worthless becomes the only one who can save the Alpha King and make his heart kneel? The rain came hard that night, washing the blood from the stones as if the moon herself was ashamed. Lyra knelt in the mud, her white ceremonial dress torn and stained, her hands bound by iron cuffs that burned against her skin. Around her, her clan watched in silence. Faces she'd known since childhood, now cold and distant. The elder's voice cut through the downpour like a blade. For a woman who cannot bear pups, what use is she to the Moonpack? His words echoed, cruel and final. Lyra's throat tightened, her breath trembling as she searched for her mother's eyes in the crowd, but even she turned away. Lightning flashed, and for a brief second, Lyra saw the reflection of herself in a puddle, broken, trembling, unwanted. Then came the verdict. She is sold to the traders at the border. A gasp rippled through the pack, but no one spoke. No one stopped it. The chains dragged her away from everything she'd ever known. The wagon smelled of rust and fear. Each bump of the rocky path drove the metal cuffs deeper into her wrists. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. Her people, her pack, but none howled for her. Through the narrow slits of the wagon's wooden walls, she saw the moonlight slicing through the trees, painting her face in silver. She remembered the night she'd first shifted at 16, the pride in her father's eyes, the joy in her heart. Back then, she'd been told she'd be mated to one of the Alpha sons. But years had passed and no child had come. Rumors spread. Whispers turned to mockery. And now, here she was, traded like livestock. The wagon jerked to a stop. A deep voice growled outside, sharp and commanding. Open it. The doors creaked open, revealing a tall man cloaked in black fur, his silver eyes burning like the winter moon. The traders bowed instantly. "My lord," one stammered, "this one is Barren, but she's strong, trained to serve." The man stepped closer. Lyra could feel his presence, heavy, ancient, dangerous. He studied her, saying nothing. Then in one swift motion, he broke her chains as if they were paper. The traders gasped. "She's not for sale anymore," he said, his voice low and final. "She belongs to me now." Before Lyra could speak, he lifted her effortlessly, carrying her toward a midnight black horse waiting nearby. "Who are you?" she whispered. He turned his head slightly, and under the faint glow of the moon, she saw the mark on his neck, 3 silver scars shaped like a crescent. Her breath caught. Every werewolf knew that mark. The Alpha King. They rode through the forest in silence. The air grew colder, and the scent of pine and rain mixed with the musk of his power. Lyra's heart pounded. Why would the Alpha King, a man feared across kingdoms, want her, a barren outcast? She dared to glance at him. His jaw was sharp, his expression unreadable. His eyes, though fierce, carried something beneath, grief maybe, or loneliness. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, almost human. "What's your name?" "Lyra, of the Moonpack." He nodded once. "Not anymore," he muttered. "From tonight, you're Lyra of the King's Guard." Her breath hitched. "Guard?" She didn't understand. "Why?" she asked. The Alpha King didn't answer. He only looked ahead, toward the mountains where his kingdom slept beneath the storm. By dawn, the rain had stopped. The first light of morning bled across the sky as they entered the dark stone gates of the king's fortress. Soldiers stood to attention as the Alpha King dismounted, still holding Lyra's wrist, as though she might vanish. Inside the great hall, she saw murals of ancient battles, silver torches flickering against wolf-carved pillars, and a throne of black stone that seemed to pulse with quiet power. The king faced her finally. "You were thrown away because you can't bear children," he said, voice steady but edged with something strange. "Regret? But I need no breeder. I need loyalty. I need someone untouched by greed, someone with nothing left to lose." Lyra met his gaze, her pulse quickening. "Why me?" she whispered. The king stepped closer, his eyes softening just enough to chill her soul. "Because the moon chose you before your clan ever did." The morning after her arrival at the fortress, Lyra woke to the sound of steel clashing against steel. The training yard below her window echoed with the grunts and growls of soldiers sparring. She blinked against the sunlight pouring in through the tall arched window, light that painted the stone walls gold and revealed the silken robe left for her at the bedside. She slipped it on, the fabric brushing her skin like water. Beneath it, a thin mark on her wrist glowed faintly. Where the Alpha King had touched her, it pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Outside, she saw the king himself training bare-chested, his movements a blur of strength and control. His blade caught the light, slicing the air with precision. Every warrior paused when he moved, every eye followed. Yet when his gaze lifted, it found hers instantly. Her breath caught. He didn't smile. He only said one word across the courtyard, lips barely moving. "Come." The soldiers parted as she descended the steps, whispers following her like shadows. "That's the Barren girl, the one he brought from the traders. Why her?" Lyra pretended not to hear, but each murmur was a knife. The Alpha King stood waiting beside a pool of rainwater from the night before, his reflection rippling in it. "You slept well?" he asked, his tone unreadable. She nodded, unsure if she should bow. "Good," he said. "Then we begin." He handed her a short dagger, its hilt carved with the same crescent mark from his neck. "Every member of my guard must fight. You will learn or you will bleed." Lyra hesitated. "I have never held a blade." "Then it's time." His expression softened slightly, but his voice stayed firm. "You were not sent to me by chance, Lyra. You were chosen." She looked up at him, heart racing. Chosen for what? He stepped closer until she could see the faint scar across his collarbone. "To change what the moon herself has written." The training was brutal. Her palms blistered, her arms ached, and every failure earned her a cold silence from the king. The soldiers watched with mixed expressions, some mocking, others pitying. When she stumbled, one of them, a broad-shouldered warrior named Kale, laughed under his breath. A barren she-wolf playing soldier. The king's gaze snapped toward him like lightning. "Mock her again, and you'll bleed before she does." The yard fell silent. Lyra's heart pounded as she raised the dagger again, sweat mixing with dust on her skin. When she moved this time, she felt something stir inside her, a low hum deep in her chest. The blade glowed faintly as it sliced through the air. The king noticed. His eyes widened, but only for a heartbeat. "Enough," he said quietly. "You've done well." She didn't understand what had just happened, only that something ancient inside her had awakened, and he had seen it. That night, the fortress was quiet, except for the howling wind that swept across the mountain peaks. Lyra couldn't sleep. The mark on her wrist glowed again, brighter this time. She followed its faint light out to the balcony, where the moon hung heavy and full. The moment she looked up, a whisper filled her ears. Not a sound, but a voice that came from within. "You are not barren, Lyra. You are bound." Her knees weakened. Who are you?" she whispered. "I am what they feared, what he seeks to break." The wind grew colder, wrapping around her like invisible hands. "The Alpha King carries a curse, child of the moon, one that only you can unbind." The voice faded as the light on her wrist dimmed. Lyra clutched her arm, trembling. Not barren, bound. The words repeated in her mind, rewriting everything she thought she knew about herself. At dawn, she found the king standing on the ramparts, staring into the valley below where mists curled like ghosts. She hesitated before stepping closer.
"Last night," she began, "I heard something. The moon. She spoke." The king turned sharply, his eyes fierce. "What did she say?" Lyra swallowed hard. "Then I'm not barren? Then I'm bound, and that you carry a curse." His jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck flexing. For the first time, she saw fear behind his strength. "You shouldn't have heard that. The moon's voice is not meant for mortal ears." Lyra met his gaze. "Maybe I was never mortal to begin with." The silence between them was thick, electric. Then, slowly, the Alpha King said, "Then it begins sooner than I feared."
The fortress felt heavier that morning, as though the walls themselves had heard what Lyra said to the Alpha King. Servants moved quietly, avoiding his gaze. Even the air held its breath. The king had vanished from sight after dawn, leaving her alone in the grand hall. She traced her fingers along the black stone throne where he usually sat. It was cold, almost alive, pulsing faintly beneath her touch. Then a sound, metal against metal, from behind the throne. She followed it, down a narrow stairwell lit by torches that burned blue instead of gold. At the bottom was a hidden chamber, the air thick with smoke and moonlight seeping through cracks in the ceiling. There, kneeling before an altar carved with runes, was the Alpha King. His back was bare, his shoulders trembling. Black veins spread across his skin, crawling toward his heart. He looked up sharply when she entered, eyes no longer silver but dark, like the void before dawn. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped. Lyra froze, her heart pounding. "You're hurt," she whispered, taking a step closer. "Stay back," he growled, his voice breaking into something feral. But it wasn't anger, it was fear. "When the curse rises, I lose control." She ignored him, moving forward until the air between them shimmered with his energy, raw, unstable, wild. "Let me help," she said softly. "The moon sent me for this." The king's breathing quickened, the veins darkening as he struggled to contain himself. "No one can help me," he hissed. "Every full moon it feeds, on my strength, on my soul. Soon it will consume everything." Lyra reached out, pressing her glowing wrist to his chest. The black lines recoiled as if burned, retreating slightly. The king gasped, clutching her hand. "What did you do?" he demanded. I don't know," I stammered. I just felt like I had to." His eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, the curse stilled. When it was over, he leaned against the altar, breathing heavily. "It's been years since anyone touched me without pain," he murmured, half in disbelief. Lyra knelt beside him, her fingers still warm from the strange power that had flowed through her. "Tell me what happened to you." The king's expression hardened, but his voice was quieter now, almost weary. "Long before you were born, I made a vow to protect this land from the Shadow Pack. They worshipped the dark moon, something older and crueler than the goddess we know. When I defeated them, their priestess cursed me. Your heart will never know rest, your blood will devour itself, and the one who can free you will suffer more than you." Lyra's chest tightened. "And you think that's me?" His gaze dropped to her glowing wrist. "The moon has never chosen by mistake." For days, Lyra trained harder than before, fighting, running, pushing her limits until her hands bled. But every time she looked at the king, something inside her ached. He watched her often, from the shadows of the training yard, as though memorizing her every movement. The soldiers noticed, too. "The Alpha never trains anyone himself," Kale whispered to another guard. "She's different." That night, during dinner in the great hall, Lyra felt the king's presence before she saw him. The room fell silent as he entered, dressed not in armor, but in black velvet embroidered with silver thread. His eyes found hers instantly. "Walk with me," he said, not asking, but commanding. They walked through the moonlit corridors until they reached the balcony overlooking the valley. "You shouldn't risk touching the curse again. It feeds on light." Lyra looked at him steadily. Then it chose the wrong enemy. For the first time, a faint smile touched his lips.
Before she could speak again, a horn echoed from the mountains, low, haunting, urgent. The king's smile vanished. He turned sharply toward the sound, eyes flashing with silver light. Scouts. The shadow remnants have crossed the border. Lyra's pulse quickened. Then we fight? He shook his head. No, not yet. They want me to come to them. He faced her, his expression hardening. And they'll use anything to lure me, especially you. The wind howled between them, lifting her hair like a dark halo. Why me? She whispered. His answer was a whisper too, barely audible over the wind. Because the curse that binds me is waking, and you are the only thing strong enough to break it, or the only one it can destroy.
The warning horn still echoed through the valley as soldiers rushed to their posts. The fortress came alive with motion, armor clanking, wolves growling, the scent of steel and fear heavy in the air. From the high ramparts, Lyra watched the forest below twist in the moonlight, shadows moving where none should be. The king stood beside her, his face carved from stone. They move like smoke, he muttered. No heartbeats, no heat, only hunger. He turned to her. Stay inside the walls. Lyra shook her head before she could stop herself. You said I was chosen. Let me prove it. His gaze hardened. This isn't training, Lyra. It's death. But she stepped closer, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Then let me die doing something that matters. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, without a word, he handed her the dagger, the crescent-bladed one that hummed with strange light. Stay near me, he said, and don't look at the shadows. The battle began with silence. Then came the roar, the kind that shook the very bones of the mountain. From the forest, black wolves poured out, eyes glowing red, their bodies half mist, half flesh. The shadow pack. The king shifted mid-stride, his human form giving way to a massive silver wolf crowned with glowing scars. Lyra gasped, the power of his transformation rolling through her like thunder. He leapt into the fray, claws flashing. Soldiers followed, blades cutting through darkness that seemed to bleed light. Lyra's heart pounded as she fought to stay close. When a shadow wolf lunged at her, she raised her dagger without thinking. It struck, not flesh, but smoke, and yet the creature screamed, its body unraveling into dust. The blade glowed brighter. Another lunged, and she turned faster, her movements guided by something beyond instinct. Each strike felt like memory, like she'd done it before in another life. The battlefield shimmered with her light. But victory turned to chaos when the air split with a deep echoing chant. The shadows halted, their forms trembling. From the tree line emerged a figure in tattered silver robes, the same priestess who had cursed the king long ago. Her hair, white as bone, flowed like smoke. My, she purred, her voice cutting through the night. The moon's little mistake still lives. The Alpha King shifted back to human form, blood streaking his skin. You should have stayed buried, he snarled. The priestess smiled. And missed this, watching your precious light fade again? Her eyes turned to Lyra. Ah, the barren one. Lyra's grip tightened on the dagger. I'm not barren, she said through her teeth. The priestess's laughter was sharp and cruel. No, child, you're sealed. You carry what he fears most. The king moved instantly, placing himself between them. Enough, he roared. But his voice faltered. The black veins on his chest were spreading again. Lyra saw it happen, the curse waking, devouring him from within. He fell to one knee, clutching his chest as shadows coiled around him like snakes. No, Lyra cried, running to his side. The priestess raised her hands, the ground trembling. He cannot be saved, she hissed. Every full moon draws the curse deeper. When the next one rises, he will be mine. Lyra pressed her glowing wrist against his heart, but the curse resisted, thrashing like a living thing. Pain shot through her arm, searing her veins with fire. Still, she didn't move. You don't own him, she screamed. The moonlight flared, so bright it blinded the night.
For a moment, everything went silent. The shadows froze, the wind stopped, even the priestess staggered. Then, with a deafening crack, a burst of silver light exploded from Lyra's body, throwing the shadow pack backward into the dark. When the light faded, the battlefield was still. Only the king's labored breathing broke the silence. He looked up at her, eyes wide, the curse receding beneath his skin. You did it again," he whispered. Lyra's body trembled, her vision blurring. "I don't know how," she said weakly. The king reached for her hand, steadying her. "You are more than you know." Behind them, the priestess's voice carried on the wind, faint but certain. "You've delayed it, nothing more. When the moon bleeds, your bond will destroy you both." Then she was gone, vanishing into the trees like mist. Lyra swayed, exhaustion washing over her. The king caught her before she fell. "You defied death tonight," he said softly. "But now it will come for you harder." Her eyelids fluttered, his voice the last thing she heard before the darkness took her. "Rest, Lyra. The moon isn't done with us yet."
When Lyra woke, the fortress was quiet again. The air smelled of rain and medicine. She was lying in a room she had never seen before, its walls carved with silver runes that pulsed faintly, filling the air with a hum that matched her heartbeat. Her body felt heavy, her skin burning softly beneath the blankets. As she tried to sit, a deep voice spoke from the shadows. "You shouldn't move." The Alpha King stepped into the light, his expression unreadable. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, revealing faint scars and the fading trace of black veins along his chest. He looked human again. "You were unconscious for 2 days," he said quietly. "The healers couldn't reach you. Every time they tried, their power burned." Lyra swallowed hard. "Then how—" "I stayed," he interrupted, his gaze steady. "And you lived." The way he said it wasn't proud. It was protective. Like every breath she took was a promise he had to keep. She tried to speak, but pain lanced through her wrist, the same place the light had burnt brightest. When she lifted her arm, she gasped. A new mark had appeared beside the glowing crescent, an intricate line of silver running up her veins, faintly pulsing like it was alive. "It's growing," she whispered. The king nodded. "It's binding." He moved closer, his hand hovering above her skin without touching. "You and I share the same curse now, Lyra. When you drew the curse from me, it didn't vanish, it divided." Her pulse quickened. "So, I'm cursed too?" "Not cursed," he said slowly. "Linked. The moon's mark doesn't choose lightly." His eyes flicked to hers, intense and searching. "Can you feel it? The pull?" She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Somewhere deep inside her, she could feel him, his heartbeat, his sorrow, even the sharp edge of his thoughts. It was terrifying. And yet, part of her didn't want to let go. Over the next few days, they barely spoke, but silence became its own language. She could feel him even when he wasn't in the room, when he trained outside, when he stood alone on the balcony staring at the moon. Each time he felt the curse, she felt it too, like a phantom ache beneath her ribs. Once, in the quiet of midnight, she woke to find him sitting beside her bed, the moonlight curling across his face. "You dream of the priestess," he said softly, not asking, but knowing. She nodded. "She says I'll destroy you." His jaw tightened. "The moon's prophecies twist truth into fear. You won't destroy me." "Then what if she's right?" Lyra whispered. "What if breaking you means breaking me?" The king leaned closer, his voice rough, almost pleading. "Then I will burn before I let that happen." The words hung between them, like a vow, their hearts beating in the same rhythm. The bond changed more than her emotions. It changed her body. She noticed it during training. Her movements were faster, her senses sharper. She could hear conversations across the courtyard, smell rain before it fell. But with the power came pain. Her skin splitting where the silver veins pulsed, light bleeding through the cracks before healing again. The other guards began to stare, whispering behind her back.
She's no longer one of us, Kale said bitterly. She's becoming something. Even the healers avoided her eyes. Only the king stayed close, teaching her to control the surges. Breathe through it, he said during one session, holding her wrist as light flared beneath her skin. Don't fight it. The moon doesn't punish, it reshapes. Lyra gasped as the pain receded, replaced with calm. When she looked up, their faces were inches apart. For a moment, the world fell away. Just his breath, his eyes, and the faint hum of two hearts beating as one. That night, the moon turned red, a rare eclipse that painted the sky in blood and silver. Lyra stood on the balcony, watching its reflection ripple in the river below. The king joined her quietly, his cloak brushing her shoulder. The priestess called it the blood moon. When it rises again, the curse will demand a sacrifice. Lyra turned to him. Yours? He shook his head slowly. No. Ours. The wind howled through the fortress, scattering leaves across the floor. Somewhere deep inside, Lyra felt the bond pulse. Warm, then cold, then warm again. What happens if we don't give it what it wants? She asked. His eyes, silver and sad, met hers. Then it will take what it needs. She didn't flinch. Instead, she took his hand. Then let it try. The moonlight wrapped around them like a promise and a warning, neither knowing which would come first. By the time the sun rose over the mountains, rumors had spread through the fortress like wildfire. Servants whispered of the king's late-night visits to the woman who could heal curses. Soldiers traded stories about the glow in her eyes and how the king's wounds vanished when she touched him. Lyra felt the change in the air. Stares that once carried pity now burned with resentment. In the training yard, Kale's blade struck harder, his voice low and bitter. The king protects you more than his warriors, he spat. Tell me, what spell did you weave to make him forget the rest of us? Lyra blocked his strike, panting. I didn't ask for his protection. No, Kale sneered, but you enjoy it. The clash of metal echoed through the courtyard until a shadow fell over them both. The Alpha King stood at the edge of the arena, silent and watching. Kale dropped his sword immediately, bowing. Enough, the king said, his voice cold. You forget your place. But his eyes were on Lyra, fierce, worried, protective. That night, the council demanded answers. The grand hall filled with murmurs and distrust, the elders seated in a semicircle before the throne. Lyra stood beside the king, her palms sweating. Elder Barren, a sharp-eyed man with a silver braid, spoke first. You've brought danger among us, he said to the king. This girl is not of royal blood. The curse she carries could infect us all. The king's voice was calm, but cut like a blade. If she hadn't intervened, we'd all be dead. And what if she's the reason the curse grows stronger? Barren countered. The room erupted with voices, accusations, fear, old superstitions rising like smoke. Lyra felt her chest tighten. I never wanted this, she said quietly, but no one heard her. The king's hand brushed hers beneath the table, a silent reassurance. Then his voice rose above the noise. If anyone here doubts my judgment, challenge me by the next moon. Until then, Lyra stays under my protection. The hall fell into uneasy silence. No one dared meet his eyes. When the council dispersed, Lyra followed the king into the corridor. You shouldn't have defended me, she said, her voice trembling. Now they'll hate you for it. He stopped, turning toward her. They already did, he said simply. They feared me since the curse began. Now they fear what you represent. Hope. She looked away. Hope terrifies people. Yes, he said softly, because it makes them remember what they lost. For a long moment, neither spoke. The torchlight flickered between them, casting gold across his face. Why do you risk everything for me? She finally asked. His jaw clenched, then relaxed. Because the night I brought you from the traders, the moon whispered something I never told you. Her heart raced. What did she say? His gaze locked on hers. The girl I would save would one day save me, but only if I could love her enough to let her go. The words lingered between them, fragile and dangerous. Love was forbidden between an alpha king and anyone outside royalty. It weakened bloodlines, the old law said. Yet, when his hand brushed her cheek, she didn't move away. The world seemed to shrink until only his breath filled it. But before their lips could meet, a sharp knock shattered the moment. Kale entered, bowing stiffly. "My king," he said, avoiding Lyra's gaze. "The scouts have returned. The Shadow Pack's banners were seen near the border again. The priestess, she's calling your name." The king's expression darkened, the tenderness vanishing like mist. "Ready the guard," he commanded. Kale nodded, but his eyes flicked to Lyra with something like fury. When he left, the king exhaled slowly. "They will use anything to get to me, even the people I care for." Lyra met his gaze, her voice soft but steady. "Then don't care for me." His reply was a whisper. Too late. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. The moon's light poured through the window, cold and bright. The mark on her wrist throbbed with heat, blowing faintly in rhythm with her heart. She walked to the balcony, staring at the forest where danger waited. Then she felt it, a pulse in her chest that wasn't hers. The king. Pain seared through her veins, forcing her to her knees. In her mind's eye, she saw him, alone in his chamber, clutching his chest, the curse twisting again. The bond was flaring, stronger than ever. "No," she gasped, "not now." Without thinking, she ran, barefoot through the halls, down the stairs, past the startled guards, until she burst into his room. The king was on the floor, his body glowing with dark light. She reached him, pressing her wrists to his heart. Their marks ignited together, silver and black swirling like fire and smoke. His eyes snapped open, meeting hers with a mixture of pain and awe. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered. Lyra held tighter. "I'll never leave you." By morning, whispers filled every corridor. The guards had seen the light from the king's chamber, two glowing figures, their power flooding the halls like a pulse. Rumor twisted truth until it became poison. "She's bewitched him," someone whispered. "The curse has spread to the throne," another said. Lyra felt their stares as she walked through the courtyard, once curious, now hostile. Even the air seemed to thicken with suspicion. She caught sight of Kael near the training yard, his jaw tight, his eyes filled with something darker than resentment. "You've made him weak," he hissed when she passed. "Before you, he was a god among wolves. Now he bleeds like the rest of us." Lyra stopped, her voice trembling but steady. "If strength means feeling nothing, then I hope he never returns to it." Kael's mouth twisted into a sneer. "Then you've already doomed him." He turned away, but she could feel the hatred radiating from him, cold and deliberate, like a storm waiting for its signal. That night, the king gathered his council again. The war drums had begun to sound from the distant valley. The Shadow Pack was moving closer. Maps covered the long table, candles burning low as soldiers debated strategy. Lyra stood quietly behind the king's chair, her presence tolerated but not welcomed. Elder Varen's voice broke the tension. "Our scouts report that the Shadow Pack now controls the southern ridge. We must strike before they reach the gates." The king shook his head. "That's what they want, to draw us into their trap." "And what would you have us do?" Varen snapped. "Wait until they burn our homes?" The king's eyes narrowed. "I will not risk lives blindly. The priestess wants me, not the fortress." The room fell silent at the mention of her. Then Varen said the words that cut deeper than any blade. Then give her what she wants. Lyra's breath caught. The king's hand slammed against the table, splitting the wood. If you ever suggest that again, he growled, you'll answer to the moon herself. The council ended in silence, but as the king dismissed the elders, Kael lingered in the shadows near the door. When the hall emptied, he stepped forward. "My king," he said softly, his tone humble, almost remorseful. "Forgive my earlier words. I only wished to serve you." The king studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Then serve with loyalty." Kael bowed low. "Always." But as Lyra left the chamber, she saw his eyes, flat, calculating, glinting with the same dark shimmer she'd seen in the priestess's magic. That night, unease kept her awake. She paced her chamber, the bond between her and the king pulsing faintly, restless. Then, sudden pain, sharp and cold, she clutched her chest, gasping. Through the bond, she felt him, struggling, choking, falling. Lyra ran again, bare feet pounding against stone, but before she could reach his door, hands seized her behind, a rag pressed over her mouth. The scent of wolfsbane filled her lungs. Darkness took her. When Lyra awoke, her wrists were bound, her head pounding. The air was damp, the walls of the cell slit with moss. Moonlight seeped through a small crack high above. She tugged at the ropes, but they burned her skin, enchanted bindings. A voice spoke from the shadows. "You should have stayed a servant." Kael stepped into view, his expression void of remorse. "The king's curse spreads with every breath you take beside him. I'm saving the pack by ending this." Lyra's throat tightened. "You're working with her," she whispered. He didn't deny it. The priestess promised freedom from his reign, from his weakness. He crouched, his face inches from hers. "You were never meant to stand beside a king. You were meant to fall at his feet." She spat at him, fury rising through the fear. "You'll regret this." Kael smirked. "I doubt it." He lifted a vial of black liquid, swirling and thick. "When he finds your body, the curse will finish what it started." The moment Kael raised the vial, the air shifted. The ground trembled beneath them, dust falling from the ceiling. She felt it, the bond flaring like fire in her veins. The king knew. His rage burned through her like a second heartbeat. Kael froze, his eyes darting upward as heavy footsteps echoed through the corridor. The iron door burst open, torn from its hinges by a force not of this world. The Alpha King stood there, eyes blazing silver, his entire body radiating raw power. "Touch her," he said, voice low and deadly, "and I'll rip the moon from the sky to bury you." Kael lunged with the vial, but before he could strike, Lyra's mark ignited. The rope snapped. Her hand shot forward, catching Kael's wrist. Light exploded between them. When it cleared, Kael was on the ground, eyes wide with terror, his body marked with the same black veins that had once cursed the king. Lyra's breathing was ragged, her glow dimming. The king caught her as she fell. "He's not dead," she whispered weakly. The king's jaw tightened. "Not yet."
The cell was silent, except for Lyra's labored breathing and the faint crackle of energy fading from her skin. Cal lay motionless on the ground, veins crawling with black rot that pulsed like a heartbeat. The Alpha King knelt beside her, brushing dust from her hair, his voice a low growl that trembled between rage and fear. "You're hurt." Lyra shook her head weakly. "He tried to—" "I know. the king cut in, eyes narrowing on Cal's body. I felt it. The torches flickered as his power surged, shadows curling around him like smoke. Lyra saw it then, the faint dark shimmer bleeding into his silver gaze. The curse. It was clawing its way back. Cal's touch, she whispered, realization sinking in. It's spreading through you again. He stood, jaw clenched, chest heaving, then I'll burn it out myself. But as he turned to leave, his steps faltered. His hand trembled. The veins beneath his skin began to blacken. Lyra caught his arm, her voice breaking. You can't fight it alone this time. They dragged Cal from the cell before dawn, bound in chains and unconscious. The fortress buzzed with panic. Word of betrayal had spread, and with it came fear that no one could be trusted. The king ordered Cal confined in the underground crypt, where no magic could escape, and forbade anyone from entering. But the damage was done. Every whisper now carried doubt. If his own beta could turn, what chance do we have? Lyra felt their eyes on her again, suspicion tightening around her like a noose. The king's illness worsened by the hour, his skin growing pale, his veins dark. He hid it well during council meetings, but behind closed doors, Lyra saw the truth. His strength was unraveling. One evening, as she helped him remove his armor, she saw the black tendrils snaking up his arm. You're dying, she said quietly. He turned to her, eyes distant. Maybe this is what fate wanted. Maybe the curse isn't meant to be broken. Lyra grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. Then I'll break fate, too. The nights grew longer. Thunder rolled across the mountains and storms beat against the walls as though the heavens themselves were warning them. Lyra barely slept. She searched every corner of the ancient library for answers, her fingers tracing over runes older than the fortress itself. The word kept appearing. Sacramentum Lunae, the moon's offering. A ritual so forbidden that even the elders had burned its pages. It spoke of one truth. A cursed bond could only be healed through shared blood and self-sacrifice under the full moon. But the price? One heart must still. Lyra's hands trembled as she closed the book. She looked up at the moonlight filtering through the window, cold and silver. Could she do it? Could she give her life to save him? When she found him later that night, sitting alone in the great hall, she didn't tell him what she'd read. She only knelt before him, resting her head against his chest, listening to the faint, fading rhythm of his heart. You won't die, she whispered, not while I breathe. But the curse had other plans. On the third night, the king awoke with a roar that shook the fortress. His eyes glowed black instead of silver. Power burst from him like a storm, shattering mirrors and throwing guards across the room. Lyra rushed in, her hair whipping around her face as the wind howled. Cal's corruption! It's inside you! She shouted. The king's voice came from everywhere at once, layered with something inhuman. He opened a door that cannot be closed. His hands clutched his chest, pain carving lines into his face. Lyra, run. She shook her head, tears streaming. I won't. The floor cracked beneath them as his power surged again. Lyra stepped closer, ignoring the shards cutting her feet. You said the curse wanted your heart, then let it take mine instead. For a moment, the storm froze. His blackened eyes flickered, silver, then dark, then silver again. He reached for her, trembling, his voice a whisper. Don't say that. She caught his hand, pressing it to her heart. Then fight it for me. For one terrifying heartbeat, Lyra thought she'd lost him. The king collapsed, body convulsing, shadows spilling from his mouth like smoke. But as his fingers gripped hers, she felt something shift, the bond igniting, glowing white hot. The curse screamed through him, twisting, thrashing, then burning. The light from their joined hands filled the room, forcing the darkness back. When it finally faded, the king lay still, chest rising and falling, color returning to his skin. Lyra fell beside him, trembling, tears streaking her face. The door burst open as soldiers rushed in, stopping in awe at the sight before them, their alpha king alive, the black veins gone. What happened? One whispered. Lyra wiped her face, her voice hoarse. Love happened. But even as she said it, her gaze shifted toward the distant crypt. A chill ran down her spine.
because somewhere deep beneath the fortress, Cal was awake and smiling in the dark.
Thunder split the sky like a blade. Rain poured over the fortress, soaking the banners that once bore the king's crest. Below, in the crypt, Cale's eyes snapped open. The black veins on his skin pulsed with unnatural rhythm, and his chains, those forged with sacred silver, began to crack one by one. "You thought you could cage the dark?" he whispered, voice dripping with venom. The priestess's voice echoed faintly inside his head, smooth and commanding. "The moon's chosen must fall. His blood will open the gate." Cale smiled. "Then I'll bring you his crown myself." He rose, shards of broken silver scattering at his feet. And as he stepped into the torchlight, his body began to shift. Not into a wolf, but something else. His eyes turned red, his claws stretched longer than any lichens. The Shadow Alpha had risen. Above, Lyra awoke with a jolt, heart hammering. The air felt heavy, charged, wrong. She rushed to the king's chamber and found him standing by the window, half-dressed, staring out at the storm. "You feel it too," he murmured. She nodded. "Cale." The king turned, and for the first time in days, there was no weakness in him, only fury. "He's broken free." Alarms sounded across the fortress. Soldiers scrambled through the rain-soaked courtyards, shouting orders, raising torches. Lyra caught the faint scent of smoke, something burning. Then came the sound that froze her blood. A howl, low and distorted, echoing from beneath the earth. Not a wolf's cry, something darker. The king grabbed his sword, its silver edge gleaming. "Stay behind me," he ordered. Lyra's jaw tightened. No. She reached for the dagger she'd hidden in her cloak. "I've lost everything once already. I won't lose you too." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for a heartbeat, love broke through the fear. "Then we fight together." The ground split as Cale emerged from the crypt, cloaked in smoke and shadow. His laughter rolled like thunder. The soldiers who met him fell within seconds, their weapons shattering on contact. The curse had become armor. The king and Lyra arrived at the courtyard as Cale tore through the gates. Rain hissed against his corrupted form, steam rising where droplets touched his skin. "You should have killed me when you had the chance. Now I'll finish what the moon began." The king's blade met his claws with a crash that shook the stone walls. Sparks flew. Lyra moved fast, drawing runes in the mud with her blood, weaving ancient symbols that glowed faintly beneath the rain. But Cale was faster. He struck her aside with a single blow, sending her crashing against the marble steps. Pain shot through her ribs, but she forced herself up, whispering through clenched teeth, "Not again." She thrust her hands forward, and light burst from her palms, wrapping around the king's sword like fire. The battle raged through the night. Every strike echoed across the mountains. Cale fought with the fury of a god, his strength drawn from the priestess's curse. The king's blade cut deep, but the wounds closed almost instantly. Lyra joined the fight, her magic flaring brighter than ever before. Together, they drove Cale back toward the altar, in the courtyard, the same one where the king had once been cursed. Lightning struck the tower, illuminating the chaos in flashes. Cale sneered, "You can't kill what's already damned." "Then I'll free what's left of you," Lyra shouted. She pressed her hand to the ground and completed the rune circle. Light erupted, trapping Cale inside. He roared, shadows whipping around him, but the light held, barely. The king stepped into the circle, sword raised. For the pack. For her. He drove the blade straight through Cale's heart. For one terrible moment, silence fell. Then Cale smiled, a cruel, broken smile. "You're too late." His body dissolved into black smoke that shot upward, spiraling into the storm. The priestess's laughter followed it. The sky bled red. The storm vanished, leaving eerie stillness. Lyra collapsed, her strength spent. The king fell beside her, gripping her hand. "He's gone," she whispered.
But the king shook his head, eyes wide with dread. No, he's become one with her. They both turned toward the horizon, where the moon now glowed crimson. A dark shape formed within it, a woman's silhouette, her voice echoing faintly in the wind. You killed my vessel, now I'll claim my own. The ground trembled again, fissures snaking through the courtyard. Lyra's mark burned white hot, and she realized the truth. The bond that tied her to the king also tied her to the priestess's power. She's coming through me, Lyra gasped. The king caught her shoulders, desperate. No, I won't let you take her. You can't stop her, Lyra whispered, tears streaming. But maybe I can trap her. Lightning flickered, and for the first time, fear filled the Alpha King's eyes. Not for himself, but for her.
The fortress was silent after the storm, but silence was never peace. It was the breath before disaster. The crimson moon hung above like a wound that refused to close, its light casting blood-colored shadows across the walls. Lyra lay unconscious in the king's arms, her skin pale, veins glowing faintly white. Every few seconds, her body twitched as if something inside her fought to break free. Stay with me, the king whispered, his voice cracking. He carried her to the healer's wing, ignoring the guards' fearful looks. They'd seen her mark glowing brighter than the torches, knew what that meant. When the healers gathered, none dared to touch her. The curse has claimed her, one muttered. She's no longer one of us. The king's growl silenced them. She is mine. You will try. But even as they obeyed, a whisper drifted through the air, soft and cruel. You cannot save what was promised to me. The king froze. The voice came from Lyra's mouth, yet her eyes remained closed. Hours passed. Lyra's fever worsened, her body glowing faintly beneath the crimson moonlight that filtered through the windows. The king never left her side. He sat on the edge of her bed, his sword across his knees, watching every tremor in her breath. When she finally stirred, her voice was weak, unfamiliar. Where am I? You're safe, he said quickly, reaching for her hand, but she pulled away. Her eyes opened slowly, and his heart froze. They were no longer Lyra's eyes. They gleamed like liquid silver, streaked with black. A slow, cold smile curved her lips. So this is the body you've chosen for me. The king rose, sword in hand. Get out of her. The priestess laughed, the sound echoing off the walls like broken glass. I killed my vessel. I had to find another. And she was so willing to bleed for you. Lyra's voice softened, the real her struggling beneath. Carl, open the door. I can't hold her. The priestess's tone sharpened. Oh, but you will, my dear, until the moon turns white again. The priestess, wearing Lyra's face, stood and moved with an eerie grace, tracing her fingers along the king's chest plate. You're stronger than I expected, but even kings fall to desire. The king's grip on his sword tightened, his voice shaking with fury. I'll burn the world before I let you use her. The priestess's smile widened. Then burn it. Every fire only feeds me. She leaned closer, whispering, Tell me, Alpha, when you kissed her, did you ever wonder if it was me you were craving? The king's roar shattered the chair beside him, his blade flashing toward her throat. But she vanished, reappearing across the room in a shimmer of smoke. You can't kill me, she said calmly. Not without killing her. The king froze, the sword trembling in his hand. What do you want? Her silver-black eyes glowed brighter. The same thing she does, to end the curse. But where she seeks freedom, I seek completion. The moon's offering must be made, and the heart she loves must be given.
When the priestess finally retreated into the depths of Lyra's mind, her body collapsed again, leaving her gasping and trembling. The king caught her before she hit the floor. "You fought her," he said, voice low, almost awed. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I can feel her, inside me, watching." "We'll find a way," he promised. But even as he spoke, he could see the cracks forming in her soul, the flicker of silver light that wasn't hers. That night, as she slept, he went to the ancient library, tracing the same path she once had. He found the torn remains of the moon's offering ritual, half burned, the ink still faintly glowing. The words chilled him. "When the vessel and the bonded become one, only blood freely given can cleanse the mark." He closed his eyes, realization slicing through him like a blade. The priestess didn't just want Lyra's body. She wanted their bond, the love that had defied fate itself to finish the curse. By dawn, the crimson hue of the moon had deepened to scarlet. The wind carried the scent of smoke again, distant but growing closer. The shadow pack was returning, an army marching under a black banner marked by the priestess's sigil. The king watched from the tower, his heart heavy with the choice forming inside him. Behind him, Lyra approached quietly, pale and trembling. "She's stronger," she whispered. "Every time I fight her, she takes more." He turned to her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're not losing. You're surviving." Her lips trembled. "For how long?" He hesitated. "Long enough to end this." Lyra searched his eyes, sensing the truth he didn't speak. "You've read the ritual." He didn't answer. "You mean to offer yourself?" He looked away, jaw set. "Better me than you." Her hand caught his arm, desperate. "If you die, she wins, because that's what she wants, to make me live with the loss." Outside, the war drums began to sound again, shaking the fortress to its core.
The night before the battle was painfully quiet. The fortress had never felt so alive, yet so close to death. Torches burned low in the corridors, their flames bending in the wind. Warriors moved like ghosts, sharpening blades and whispering prayers to gods who had long stopped listening. In the king's chamber, Lyra sat by the window, staring at the crimson moon that refused to fade. Her reflection in the glass looked foreign, eyes too bright, veins faintly glowing. She could feel the priestess in every heartbeat, every breath, waiting for her moment. Behind her, the Alpha King stood in silence, fastening his armor. Each piece gleamed like liquid silver, etched with old scars from past wars. "You shouldn't be fighting," Lyra said quietly. "Neither should you," he replied without turning. She rose and crossed to him, placing her hand over his chest plate. "If you go out there tomorrow, planning to die, you'll only finish what she started." He looked at her, his gaze heavy with everything unspoken. "Then tell me, Lyra, what's left to save if the moon takes you first?" For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them pulsed with grief, fear, and something deeper, something too sacred to name. Lyra finally said, "When my clan sold me, I thought that was the end of my story. I thought I'd spend my life being a reminder of failure, of emptiness. But you," she smiled faintly through tears, "you made me believe I was still whole." He reached up, fingers brushing her cheek. "You've always been whole." His voice cracked as he said it. "The curse didn't choose you because you were weak, Lyra. It chose you because you were the only one strong enough to bear it." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "Then let me bear it a little longer." "No," he whispered, "not alone." He kissed her forehead, slow and trembling. "When the blood moon rises tomorrow, I'll find a way to end this, even if the gods damn me for it." Lyra caught his hand, desperate. "Promise me one thing." anything. Don't let love be your death. He hesitated, then lied gently. I promise. Morning came wrapped in fog and silence. The crimson moon still loomed in the daylight sky, faint but unyielding. The fortress courtyard buzzed with preparation, wolves shifting into their battle forms, armor glinting under pale light. The king descended the stone steps, every movement steady, every command calm. Yet beneath that calm was fire. Lyra followed him, her cloak whipping in the wind. The people bowed as they passed, not out of duty but faith. They believe in you, Lyra said softly. They believe in us, he corrected. They saw what you did, the light you brought when darkness tried to claim me. He looked ahead, his eyes hardening. And that's why she fears you. Lyra's grip tightened around the dagger at her waist, the same one she'd used to draw the runes. Fear won't stop her. No, he said, glancing toward the blood-red horizon, but love might. Then, lowering his voice, if I fall, you finish what I started. Lyra frowned. You promised. I promised to protect you, and I will, even from myself. As the sun sank, turning the clouds to gold and blood, the king gathered his generals for one final council. Maps were spread across the table, arrows marking enemy routes. The Shadow Pack's army was massive, 10 times their number, driven by dark magic that twisted wolves into something unholy. The king's second-in-command spoke grimly. We can't win this. We don't need to win, the king said, his tone quiet but unshakable. We need to survive until the moon's offering is complete. The room stilled. You're going through with it, someone whispered. Lyra entered them, her presence silencing them all. No, she said firmly, he's not. The king turned to her, his mask of calm slipping for just a heartbeat. Lyra, don't, she snapped. You think sacrificing yourself will save us? That's not fate, that's surrender. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure if they should look away. Lyra stepped closer, eyes bright with tears and fury. If the moon demands blood, she'll take mine, not yours. The king's voice dropped, soft but final. That's exactly what I'm trying to prevent. The council dispersed in silence. Night fell once more, and the fortress became a sea of torches and whispered prayers. Lyra stood on the balcony overlooking the field where tomorrow's battle would decide everything. The wind carried faint howls from beyond the forest, enemy scouts already near. The king joined her, his cloak rippling in the cold air. Neither spoke at first. Then he said quietly, when this is over, if the moon allows, I'll build you a garden where no one will ever call you cursed again. Lyra smiled faintly. You still think there's an after to this? There has to be, he whispered. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For a moment, the world stopped. The war, the curse, the gods. There was only them. Then the moonlight flickered, turning crimson once more. A cold voice echoed faintly in the wind. Tomorrow, the moon will drink. Lyra's eyes opened, glowing faintly silver. The priestess was awake again, and she was listening. The crimson moon hung like a wound in the sky. Its light spilled across the valley, staining armor and stone in shades of scarlet. From the fortress walls, Lyra watched the horizon tremble with movement, an ocean of shadows rising from the trees, the Shadow Pack. Thousands of them, wolves with black, glassy eyes, their fur slick with dark magic. At the front rode their leader, Alpha Dreven, a figure wreathed in mist, his eyes glowing like burning coals. The king stood beside her, his armor gleaming silver against the red. When the horns sound, you stay inside the walls, he ordered. You'll need me out there, she shot back. I need you alive, he said, voice steel-edged. Before she could answer, the war horns blared, a sound that shook the earth. The gates opened. The Alpha King drew his sword, a blade older than memory, and shouted one command that cracked through the night. For the light, for the moon's truth. Then the world erupted in chaos. Steel met claw. The field exploded with motion. Wolves collided midair, snarls and screams tearing the night apart. Magic hissed through the air, black lightning clashing against the king's radiant aura. He fought like a storm unleashed, every strike precise, every movement purposeful. Blood sprayed across his silver armor, but he did not falter. From the fortress walls, Lyra chanted runes, summoning light to shield their warriors. The glow burned through the shadows, but with every spell she cast, pain seared through her chest. The priestess was awakening faster now, feeding on the chaos. You cannot win this, the voice hissed inside her. You were made to fall. Lyra's knees buckled, her vision blurred with white heat. No, she gasped, gripping the edge of the battlement. Not again. Below, she saw the king surrounded, dozens of shadow wolves closing in. Her pulse spiked. Without thinking, she leapt from the wall. Light exploded around her as she hit the ground, her body glowing like molten gold. The impact shattered the earth. The wolves staggered back, blinded. Lyra rose slowly, her eyes burning silver white. The king froze when he saw her. She didn't look entirely human anymore. Her hair whipped in invisible wind, her skin marked with glowing runes that pulsed to the rhythm of the moon. Lyra, he shouted, you're not supposed to. You need me, she said, her voice layered, hers and the priestess's echoing in unison. Together they cut through the swarm. Lyra's hands blazed with light. Each strike turned shadow to ash. For a brief, breathtaking moment, hope returned. The warriors rallied behind them. The Banned Fortress banners caught the wind again. But then, Drevin moved. He raised his clawed hand, chanting words that made the air itself scream. The sky split open, and tendrils of black mist wrapped around Lyra. She's mine, Drevin snarled. The priestess within her shuddered awake. Lyra screamed, collapsing as light and darkness battled inside her. The king ran to her, slashing through anything in his path. He dropped to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms. Her eyes flickered between silver and black, her voice trembling with both fear and something ancient. She's trying to take me, Lyra whispered. I can't hold her. The king pressed his forehead to hers. Then don't fight her alone. He gripped her hands, pouring his alpha energy into her, raw, pure power. The connection burned through both of them, light clashing with shadow until the air hummed. For a second, everything froze. The priestess's voice echoed through Lyra, sharp and furious. You would give your soul for her? Foolish king! Gladly, he growled. His aura flared, gold meeting silver, forming a shield around them both. But the spell demanded blood. The king's veins darkened, pain ripping through his chest. Lyra's scream broke the spell, hurling them apart. When the dust cleared, the king lay still, motionless, beneath the crimson light. Lyra crawled toward him, her fingers trembling as she touched his face. No, she whispered. Not you, please. The battlefield blurred behind her, the clash of steel, the cries of dying wolves, but all she saw was him. Blood trickled from his lips. His eyes fluttered open just enough to meet hers. You kept your promise. You didn't let love kill me. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Don't you dare say goodbye. His hand lifted weakly, brushing her face. Then win for me. His voice faded, his body going limp.
Something inside Lyra snapped. The priestess's laughter rang in her skull. See how love ends? In ruin. Lyra's scream tore through the night, light bursting from her like a sun reborn. The battlefield froze. Every warrior, friend and foe, turned to face her. The priestess had awakened fully now, but Lyra was no longer the same frightened woman she once was. She stood tall in the storm, her power rising beyond the gods. "No more," she said, her voice trembling with light and rage.
The world burned red. The sky wept ash. All around Lyra, the battlefield was still. The enemy frozen mid-charge, the wind dead, the moon pulsing like a living heart. She stood in the center, her body aglow, her eyes reflecting both agony and infinity. The priestess's laughter echoed through the silence, soft and cruel. So much power, wasted on love. Lyra's chest heaved as the glow beneath her skin grew brighter, blinding. "Who are you?" she demanded into the void. The priestess's voice whispered back, cold as starlight. "I am you, child. I am what your kind buried when they feared women who could shape life itself." The word struck like a blade. Lyra staggered, clutching her abdomen, the same place her clan had cursed her for being empty. The priestess continued. "They called it infertility, but it was power, the ability to carry light itself. The moon sealed it away, fearing what one woman could create without her blessing." Lyra trembled. Every word tore through the lies she'd been forced to believe. She wasn't barren. She had been bound. The revelation hit harder than any blade. Memories flooded her mind. Every cruel whisper, every night she'd wept alone believing she was broken. Now she saw it differently. Her pain had never been punishment. It had been preparation. "You cursed me," she whispered to the spirit. "You hid my power under the name of shame." The priestess hissed. "And yet you still ache to save them, the ones who sold you, the king who bleeds because of you." Lyra's voice cracked, but she did not flinch. "Because love isn't weakness. It's the only thing you can't control." The wind stirred again, the frozen battlefield beginning to move. Dreven's army howled as the spell shattered. He stepped forward, eyes gleaming with malice. "So, the cursed womb finally awakens." Lyra turned to face him. Her aura burned bright enough to cast his shadow away. "No," she said softly. "The womb of creation does." Light exploded around her, silver and gold intertwined, rising into the shape of wings behind her. The Moonbringer had returned. The battle warred back to life. Dreven lunged, his claws trailing black fire. Lyra met him mid-air, her hands searing with light. Every strike sent shockwaves through the field. Shadows turned to dust beneath her touch. The fortress bells tolled as warriors looked up in awe, watching their lost queen fight like a storm born of grief. Dreven grinned, even as blood dripped from his mouth. "You think light will save you?" he mocked. "Your king is dying, and when he goes, you go too." Lyra froze for a heartbeat, his words slicing deeper than any wound. She could still feel the king's bond flickering inside her, like a dying flame. "He's still alive," she realized, and her fear became fury. She slammed her palms together, summoning a circle of light beneath them. "Then I'll burn the darkness out of this world before it takes him," she swore. The ground cracked open, radiant energy tearing through the mist. Dreven screamed as the light devoured his shadows. But even as he fell, something darker stirred within the moonlight above. A new presence descended, vast, ancient, and terrible. The crimson moon pulsed faster, spilling liquid fire across the clouds. A voice, colder than death, thundered from above. "You dare defy me, mortal child?" The moon goddess herself. The battlefield went still as every wolf, friend and foe,
bowed instinctively. Lyra alone remained standing, her hair whipping wildly in the celestial wind. "You made me this way," she shouted, her voice shaking the sky. "You called me Barren, then used me as a vessel for your war. No more." The goddess's laughter was like shattering glass. "You forget your place." "No," she said, lifting her chin. "I'm taking it back." The goddess raised her hand, and lightning fell like blades. Lyra blocked the first strike, but the next cut deep, sending her crashing to the ground. Blood stained the dirt beneath her. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Then she heard a faint heartbeat, his heartbeat, echoing through the bond. The king was alive, barely. Her tears mixed with dust as she whispered, "If I have to burn heaven itself to save you, I will." Lyra rose slowly, going brighter than before, her blood turning into threads of light. The priestess screamed within her, torn between power and rebellion. "You'll destroy everything." "Then let everything burn but the truth," she said. Her voice no longer trembled. It thundered. She lifted her hands and the moonlight bent around her will. The goddess's face, pale and furious, flickered through the sky. "This is for every woman you silenced, for every soul you called cursed." The air erupted with power as Lyra hurled her light upward, meeting divine fire head-on. The explosion turned night to day. Wolves fell to their knees. The goddess's voice cracked with fury. "You will regret this, mortal." "Maybe," Lyra said, her tears glowing, "but I'll finally be free." The sky split open. Light and darkness warred like living things, and in the heart of that storm, Lyra vanished, leaving nothing but silence and the faint sound of a heartbeat echoing from the king's chest.
The battlefield lay drowned in ash and silence. Dawn had come, but the sky refused to turn blue. The crimson moon lingered faintly above, pale now, wounded. The war was over. The shadow pack had fallen to their knees or fled into the woods, the dark mist dissolving from their veins. But none of it mattered to the Alpha King. He was kneeling in the ruins, clutching the empty space where Lyra had once stood. Her scent lingered in the air, wild roses and smoke. His armor was cracked, his hands burned from trying to reach her through the divine fire. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice raw. Around him, warriors bowed their heads, their victory hollow. "Where is she?" one murmured. "Did the goddess take her?" Another shook his head. "No one touches that kind of light and lives." The king's head snapped up, eyes burning gold. "She lives," he said, his tone iron. "I can feel her." His palm rested over his heart. The bond still pulsed there, faint but real. He rose slowly, unsteady yet unbroken. "She gave everything for this land. I won't let her fade into myth." He stumbled through the wreckage, following the pool in his chest. The battlefield stretched for miles. Bodies, broken banners, the scent of blood and smoke thick in the air. The king's vision blurred, but he didn't stop. Each step echoed with memories. Lyra laughing under the rain, whispering her fears, daring him to believe in light again. He reached the riverbank where the moonlight had struck hardest. The ground there was scorched silver, smooth as glass. In the center, something shimmered. A single feather, glowing faintly. It wasn't hers, not exactly. It was energy, the echo of her transformation. He sank to his knees, holding it gently. The moment he touched it, a whisper brushed through his mind. "Don't follow me." Her voice, soft, distant, but hers. He closed his eyes, clutching the feather to his chest. "You know I will," he said aloud, voice trembling. He looked up at the moon, now fading into dawn. If the goddess took you beyond the veil, then that's where I'm going." His warriors called after him, but he didn't look back. The king returned to the fortress only long enough to prepare. He stripped off his armor, leaving it on the throne like a promise. The hall was silent, lit by the dim glow of dying torches. He walked barefoot to the altar, the one Lyra had once stood before when she first arrived. It was cracked now, split by the force of divine power. He placed the glowing feather upon it. "Show me the path," he murmured. Nothing happened, so he did what kings were never meant to do. He knelt. "I am not your warrior tonight," he whispered to the moon. "I am her mate, her bond, her equal." The silence deepened. Then, from the shadows, a faint shimmer appeared. The ghostly image of the priestess, no longer cruel, but calm, stood before him. "You would walk into death for her?" she asked softly. "Not death, her." The priestess smiled faintly. "Then you will need to give up your name, your crown, your wolf. Only a soul can cross where she went." His jaw tightened. "Then take them." The ritual began at moonrise. The king stood at the heart of the courtyard, surrounded by his remaining pack. None tried to stop him. They watched as he drew a dagger, the same Lyra had once used to carve the runes, and slashed across his palm. Blood fell onto the feather. Light flared instantly, swirling around him like a storm. The priestess's voice echoed faintly, reciting ancient words lost to history. "By bond and by blood, by heart unbroken, let the gate of souls open once more." The ground trembled. The moon turned black, then white, then vanished altogether, plunging the world into twilight. The king's body shook violently, his golden eyes dimming to gray. Pain ripped through them, but he didn't scream. "Lyra," he whispered, as his vision blurred to white. "Wait for me." Then the world shattered. His body collapsed, lifeless to the ground. But his spirit, blazing gold, stepped through the veil. The last eclipse had come. The line between worlds erased by love. The veil was neither dark nor light. It was endless silver mist, shifting and alive. The king walked through it barefoot, the ground soft like water. Echoes whispered around him, voices of the dead, calling, pleading. He ignored them. Ahead, he saw her. Lyra stood on the edge of a silver lake, her back to him, her hair flowing like starlight. She turned slowly, and their eyes met. "You shouldn't be here," she said, tears glimmering. "Neither should you," he answered, stepping closer. She shook her head. "The goddess will destroy you." "She already tried," he said softly, "and she failed." He took her hand, the warmth real, the bond glowing between them. "We were never meant to serve the moon. We were meant to become it." The mist swirled brighter, wrapping around them. Above, faint light broke through the void, the dawn of something new. Lyra looked up, then back at him. "Then let's end this together." He smiled through tears. "Together. Always." Their hands tightened, their light merged, and the veil began to tremble, preparing to collapse. The veil shuddered like glass under thunder. Light fractured across the silver horizon as Lyra and the king stood side by side, their hands clasped, their souls blazing brighter than the heavens. The air trembled with divine rage. From above, a voice rolled through the mist, colder than winter, louder than storms. "You defy eternity itself." The moon goddess descended in a surge of light and shadow, her eyes burning white, her crown a halo of fire. Around her, the mist thickened into the shapes of ancient spirits, the forgotten priestesses who had once served her. Lyra stepped forward, her voice calm but fierce. "You've ruled through fear long enough. You called women cursed because you feared their power." The goddess's laughter cracked through the void. "And you think love makes you strong? It makes you weak." Lyra looked at the king. "Then we'll be weak together." Their joined hands flared, forming a blinding pulse that rippled through the realm. The spirits turned, their faces softening, recognizing her not as rebellion, but as freedom. The goddess raised her staff and the veil split in two. The king stepped forward to shield Lyra, his eyes glowing gold even in death. "You will not touch her again," he said, voice steady. The goddess struck, and their lights collided, divine fire against mortal love. The impact shook the realm, waves of power tearing through eternity. Lyra fell to her knees, the force ripping through her soul. She heard the goddess's voice in her head, cruel and close. "You cannot destroy what made you." "No," Lyra gasped, pushing herself up, "but I can become more." She spread her arms, summoning every ounce of her pain, the years of shame, the nights of loneliness, the fire of her love. It all gathered in her palms, blazing brighter than the sun. "You called me barren, but I am full, full of light, full of life, full of every soul you silenced." She unleashed it. The explosion was not loud, but it was infinite. It was the sound of freedom tearing heaven apart. The goddess screamed as the light consumed her, her form fracturing into shards of starlight. The spirits she once bound turned their backs to her, their whispers soft and grateful. "Thank you," they breathed as they faded into peace. When the storm quieted, only Lyra and the king remained, kneeling in the silver lake that was once the goddess's throne. The moon above had changed, no longer crimson, no longer cruel. It was white again, soft and alive. The king turned to her, his voice barely a whisper. "You did it." Lyra shook her head. "We did." But even as she smiled, tears filled her eyes. The veil was collapsing, the world trembling around them. "We don't belong here," she said. "If we stay, we'll fade." The king cupped her face gently. "Then let's fade together." She closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "No," she whispered. "You have a world to lead. They still need their alpha." His lips curved into a sad smile. "And you?" "I'll be in the moonlight," she said softly. "Always." Light enveloped them once more. The veil shattered, scattering silver dust across the universe. When the king opened his eyes, he was lying on the battlefield again, the dawn breaking above him. His warriors surrounded him, gasping in awe. "He's alive," someone whispered. The crimson moon was gone, replaced by a soft, glowing white. And there, in the first rays of sunlight, petals of silver light drifted down like snow. The king rose slowly, looking to the horizon. "Lyra," he breathed. The feather he had once carried appeared in his hand again, glowing faintly. He smiled through tears. "You kept your promise." Months passed. Under his rule, the kingdoms united. The curse was never spoken of again, for it no longer existed. And on every full moon, the people swore they could see a woman's silhouette in the light, watching, smiling, blessing them with warmth. The children called her the Moonbringer. The king called her my forever. Years later, when his hair turned silver and his strength waned, the king walked once more to the river where they had first met. The air was still, the moon bright. He knelt by the water and whispered, "I'm ready." The reflection shimmered, and then she was there. Lyra, as radiant as the night he lost her, smiling softly. "You kept your promise," she said. He reached for her hand,
and this time it didn't pass through light. "You waited," he whispered. "Always," she replied. The wind carried their laughter across the valley as the moon bowed low, its light bathing the earth in peace. When the warriors found the king's cloak the next morning, it lay folded by the riverbank, 2 silver feathers resting on top. And from that night on, the moon never burned red again. It shone silver, warm and alive, whispering to those who looked up that love, true love, is the only power strong enough to rewrite destiny.
Thank you for staying till the end. Please do well to like and subscribe to the channel, and also don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comment. It means a lot to me.